Hello and welcome to episode 2 of What Hannah Knits. My name is Hannah and I am a knitter based in the UK, and I live here with my partner and our little dog Bertie. So it has been quite a while since I uploaded episode 1 of my knitting podcast style videos. However, I have since uploaded my Everything That I Knit in 2024 video, and I'm back today with my regular content in which I will be speaking about my finished objects and also any current projects that I have on the needles. I do also have some acquisitions to talk about today because it has been Christmas since the last time I did one of these style videos, so I have some Christmassy gifted yarns to talk about today. Before we do move into all the knitty related content, I just wanted to pop in a quick thank you for anyone that has liked, commented, subscribed, or even just watched my previous 2 videos. I've really enjoyed particularly engaging in the comments section and getting to chat with some of you and share our joy of knitting. Now, I have a few finished objects to talk about today. And I am conscious that all of these finished objects were mentioned in my What I Knit in 2024 video. So to keep this from being too repetitive, I'm going to try and keep this section quite brief and perhaps try to mention some of the details that I haven't mentioned previously so that I'm not just repeating myself, because I think that could become quite boring. So up first, I have my Albertville 1992 ski sweater. This pattern is a pattern that was designed for the Norwegian Winter Olympics skiing team. And there are various versions of these designs from different Winter Olympic years. And for lots of them, you can find them online for free with a little bit of Googling in either Norwegian or English. So obviously this is the 1992 Winter Olympics variation. So it is quite a vintage pattern. So it's very different to the modern style patterns that we're all used to. But it's such a beautiful design, and I really enjoyed knitting it. So I'll talk a little bit about how it's constructed. So it is knit from the bottom up. You knit a huge tube basically for the colour work. In the original pattern, you cast on a number of stitches and then begin to increase as you're working the colourwork tube, so you get this sort of cinching effect towards the waistline. I wanted to go for a more boxy fit, so I just cast on a number of stitches and worked the tube with no increases. Because I was working this off gauge, I just calculated a stitch count based on my gauge and the finished circumference that I was looking for. Sorry, just a little coughing fit there. But yes, I cast on the number of stitches that I had calculated and then just knit the tube. Once you reach this section here, of course where the neckline is, you do then knit colourwork flat whilst decreasing to shape the neckline on the front and the back. So you're knitting the colourwork back and forth. Knitting the colourwork back and forth wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. It was just a little slower. Again, because I was knitting this off gauge, I sort of disregarded the instructions in the pattern for the neckline and just calculated it myself, and I think that worked out quite well. The sleeves are also knit from the bottom up. Because I was working off gauge, I calculated the stitch count for the circumference of the widest part of the sleeve and also for the cuff. I also calculated, based on my row gauge, how many rows I would need to achieve the length that I wanted on the sleeve. And then I calculated so that my decreases would be evenly distributed as I worked towards this final circumference on the sleeve. Hopefully that makes sense. So it was quite a lot of calculations that went into this, but I weirdly enjoy doing things like that, so I didn't really mind. If you were knitting it to gauge, I don't think it would be that much of a problem. It would probably be much easier. Then, of course, you need to attach your sleeves to the body of your sweater, and you do steek your knitting to create the armholes. So you're cutting into your knitting. This was my first time ever doing that, so it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I think one of the more common methods for reinforcing the stitches before you actually cut into the knitting is to use a sewing machine. I do not own a sewing machine or possess the skills to use one. So I did a little bit of research and I ended up going with the crochet method to put in those reinforcements before I cut into the knitting, which seemed to work really well. My crochet skills are very, very limited, but as long as you are able to just make a chain with a crochet hook, you will be absolutely fine using this method. It was really, really easy. And once you've put in those reinforcements, you just cut down into the knitting to create the armhole, and then you hand stitch in the sleeve. So for all of those processes, the steeking and the sewing in of the sleeve, I actually used tutorials on YouTube to help me and guide me through that process. I used various different tutorials at all the different stages, and it was quite a while ago now, so I can't actually remember the ones that I used. But there is so many resources out there, and I was just really specific when I was typing into the YouTube search. Before I picked up the stitches to knit the collar, and before I had actually cut the steeks into the body, I wet blocked the body and the two sleeves. And when I wet blocked them, I made sure to pin them out to the exact measurements that I wanted, and also to make sure that the fold down the sides of the body and the folds on the sleeves were really, really crisp, because when you are attaching the sleeves and you're lining everything up for the steek, it's really important to be able to identify where the middle point is on the side of the sweater, and also to be able to identify where the middle point is on the sleeve, so that you can sew it in so that everything lines up nicely, so that the top of the sleeve is on the top of your shoulder. So I found that by blocking them and making everything nice and crisp, it made that process a little bit easier. So after I blocked everything was when I did the collar and the steeking and the attaching of the sleeves. Once I'd done all that, everything looked a little bit lumpy bumpy around here and here. I really didn't want to wet block the whole thing again because I was just so excited to wear it. So I actually just steam blocked around the collar and on the seam here where I had attached the sleeve. And it worked really well, and I don't think it actually needs a wet block. Everything sort of really relaxed up after doing that. So the yarn that I used Holst Garn Super Soft. I'll pop the colours up onto the screen because there's various different shades that I used. Of course, it is all over colorwork, and there are six colours in total that you use to create this pattern. I talked a lot about the yarn in my first video, so I won't go into all of those details again, but I will talk a little bit about how it's held up, because I have wore this a fair bit. I wore it a fair bit over the festive period, and we've been having really cold weather here in the UK, so this has been getting quite a lot of wear because it is very, very warm. And it's holding up quite well. There is some pilling just starting to form in the areas where you would expect, so under the arms and down the sides of the sweater. But really, it's holding up pretty well so far. And it's quite a rustic feeling yarn. It's not super soft as the name would suggest. So I'm hoping that it will stand up to the test of time. My next two finished objects were Christmas gift knits. So I don't have them with me here to show, but I'll pop pictures up on the screen as I'm talking about them. And I will skim over them quite quickly because I have spoken about them in both of my previous videos now. So first up, I finished the Un sweater by November Knits, and this was a gift for my sister. I actually knit this pattern for myself in 2023, and my sister really liked the sweater, so we decided on this pattern when we were picking a pattern for her Christmas gift. So it is a very basic top-down raglan with 2x2 ribbed details, and it has quite a high up split that sits around the waist. After the split, the entire body is then worked in 2x2 rib. There's not too much else really to say about the pattern. It's a lovely pattern. It's becoming quite popular. I think lots of people have been knitting it as part of their winter knitting plans, so it's always nice to see other variations and other colours of this sweater, because I knit my sister's in a very similar shade of grey to what I knit mine. So I always enjoy seeing them in the brighter colours. The yarn that I used was Drops Lima and Drops Kid Silk. I'll pop the shade names up on the screen. And it's a really lovely combination. I like using mohair because I like the fluff, and I also like that it helps the fabric to hold up against pilling. So my sister tried on a couple of my mohair sweaters before I started knitting this, and she found that she wasn't sensitive to it at all, so we decided to go with that combination. She has been wearing it a fair bit. I saw her last weekend, and she was wearing the sweater then, and she's been getting lots of wear out of it, which is always nice when you've gifted a sweater to somebody. So hopefully that will continue. And the fit was really nice on her, which I was really pleased with. So we did lots of measurements before I started knitting the sweater. And then because it was a gift, even though she knew she was getting the sweater, I didn't want her to try it on whilst I was knitting it, because I wanted it to be as much as a surprise as it could be on Christmas Day. So I was really pleased with the fit. The sleeve length, the body length was perfect. It was just the right amount of ease. So a really big success on that one. So the next finished item that I have to talk about today was a gift for my mum, and it was the Sophie shawl. I don't think there's much to say about this pattern that hasn't been said on YouTube already. It is a pattern by Petite Knit, and it is a really basic garter stitch shawl with I-cord edging. It's a really nice pattern. There's not too much to say about it really. It is what it is. It's a very basic pattern, and it served a purpose for what I wanted for this gift knit. I knit this in a vintage yarn that I had bought from a local charity shop, and it was by the brand Patterns, and it was called Patterns Triple Knitting, I believe. There wasn't a huge amount of information on the ball band other than the shade name, which was copper. And it knit up at a similar gauge to what the pattern had recommended, so I'm presuming it's around a worsted weight, but it's tricky to say. But it worked out really well for the shawl, and again my mum has been getting lots of wear out of that one, which is always nice to see. I do have enough yarn left to knit a matching hat, so that is on the list, and hopefully I can get that done this year at some point. There's just lots of plans that I want to get around to, and that's seeming to sit more towards the bottom of the list at the moment, but I do want to get around to that, so she's got a matching set. Okay, so let's move on to my works in progress. I have 4 works in progress to talk about today, and 2 of them are garments that are so very close to being finished. So hopefully I'm going to finish at least one of them this weekend. So first up is actually a test knit that I'm taking part in. Very exciting because it's my first time ever taking part in a test knit. And this is the Lose sweater, and it is a design by Sophie of the Knit Pearl Girl. So let's just put this a little closer to the camera so you can see that lovely texture there and the lovely details on the collar. So this is a compound raglan sweater, and it's my first time ever working a compound raglan. So you work it the same as a usual raglan, but once you get to a certain stage in the yoke, you work the body and sleeve increases at different rates, and this allows you to get a better fit. So I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed working that, and I do really like how this fits me. So I may look for more of those style sweaters in the future. And of course, this does have this lovely textured pattern that is knit through the entire yoke, and then you continue with the textured pattern just for a little while after you split the sleeves down the body, and you also continue it down the sleeves as well, so this sort of hits just after the elbow, so maybe around here for me. On the body, you then work a very short section of the textured pattern. It has this lovely lateral braid detail as well before the ribbing, which is a half twisted rib, which gives a really neat result. The collar is again knit in this half twisted rib detail, and it has these lovely eyelet details as well. And you do also work that lateral braid again here before you begin knitting the ribbing for the collar. On the sleeves, very similar situation. You're knitting a small part of that texture. You then have a lateral braid with some eyelet details and another lateral braid. And again, it's in the lovely half twisted rib for the cuffs. So I just think the overall result of this sweater is so delicate and pretty, especially when you have that mohair halo going on. It just looks so lovely. So as soon as I saw the test call for this, I knew that I had to knit it, because I actually had the yarn in stash that I thought would be the perfect fit for this sweater. So I think I would have knit it even if I didn't get on the test call. I would have just patiently waited for the pattern to come out. So I was really pleased to be accepted on. So as you can see, I have a small portion of the sleeve to knit, and then we can get this one blocked, ready for wear. So that's so exciting. The yarn that I am using for this sweater is by Drops. So it is Drops Flora in the colour White Fog and Drops Kid Silk in the colour Light Beige. And I should have, here we go, I do have the skeins here to show you. So you can see that the mohair is slightly darker than the Flora. So the Flora is a fingering weight yarn, and it is a wool alpaca blend, and then of course the Kid Silk mohair is a standard lace weight mohair. So you're getting around a DK weight when you knit these up together, and I think the finished fabric is just lovely with these two yarns together, and it's quite drapey, especially in the plain stockinette areas. And it looks so lovely in this texture, just with the little fuzzy halo going on. And this texture is a slipped stitch texture. So I've really enjoyed knitting this so far. I'm hoping to get this finished this weekend and then get my tester feedback all submitted. My next work in progress is another garment, and it is also very close to being finished. This is the cardigan number 9 by My Favourite Things Knitwear. And I'm really hoping that this is going to be one of those pieces that transforms with blocking, because it's looking a little bit strange at the moment. It's all sort of bunched up. The button band is wanting to roll back under and sort of bunch up in a funny way there. So yes, hopefully this transforms with a nice wet block. So as you can see, I just have one sleeve left to finish. So this random piece of red yarn is just holding those stitches on the saddle shoulder. I just need to pick those up and get the second sleeve done. So this is of course a saddle shoulder construction. So you of course start with these 2 saddle pieces before moving into the body, and then you pick the stitches back up for the sleeves and of course pick up stitches for the button band. So it's a really lovely pattern. I think it's going to look really, really good when it's all done. My only sort of gripe with this one is just the amount of ends that will have to be woven in when it's finished, and I don't know what else the designer could really do about that. I think it's just one of the downsides of this type of construction, because there's a lot of stop and starting at the beginning when you're working this saddle shoulder portion, so it feels like you can't really get going. And it does leave you with a lot of ends that are going to be, that's quite a long one there. So yeah, there's a lot of ends that will need to be woven in. In the pattern, it recommends that you actually knit the sleeves before the button band and the collar. However, I went ahead and knit the button band and the collar before the sleeves so that I can try it on and have a better idea of how everything will sit, so that I can get the sleeve length correct. Because with cardigans, I find that before the button band's on, when you're trying it on, it's really hard to get an idea of how it's actually going to sit on the body, and then it's hard to judge the length for the sleeves. So I'm hoping that doing it this way, I will have got my sleeve length bang on where I want it to be. So this is knit at a 16 stitch gauge on 5mm needles, and it has just been flying off the needles for me, even with all of these fiddly bits around the top. So I actually cast this on in the bit in between Christmas and New Year, when nobody really knows what day it was, and we came down with a terrible case of the flu that did the rounds during that time. So I had a lot of knitting time because I just wasn't feeling up to doing much other than knitting. And this was the project that I was really focusing on at the time. I just found it quite addictive. Even though it is very stop and start at the beginning, I found that I just wanted to get onto the next little section. So it did just keep me going. And yeah, it really, really flew off the needles. So I'm hoping this weekend to get the motivation to pick up for this sleeve. And once that sleeve has had the stitches picked up and I can get that started, I think this is going to be finished quite quickly. I have also purchased the buttons for this. So on the sample photos, the designer uses toggle buttons, and now I've seen it like that, I can't see it any other way. As soon as I saw the sample pictures for this design, I knew that I had to use some wooden toggle buttons, so I have purchased some. I don't have them with me, but I will show them, of course, when this is finished, hopefully in the next episode. So the yarn that I am using for the main strand, it is a DK weight 100% British wool. And I've spoke about this before. I actually thrifted this yarn and I purchased 3 huge 500-gram hanks of this yarn. There wasn't much information to go on other than that it was DK weight and it was from a brand called British Wool, and as the name suggests, it is 100% British wool. So I don't have any of this with me because I actually need to break in to the final hank to finish the sleeve, which is also holding me back because I need to get the ball winder and swift out to wind up some more yarn. But once I've done that, I think I will get going on this again. So I'm also holding that yarn with a mohair strand, and I do have a ball here with me. So I'm using Knitting for Olive, and I'm using the soft silk mohair. There we go. And this is in the colour Fennel Seed. So this is obviously a green colour, but it's sort of a yellowy based green. And the main strand that I'm using is a very light cream, but it's a yellow based cream. So I had the idea of holding these two together to create sort of a mould effect, and I really like how the fabric has turned out. I think it's one of those things that it won't be for everyone because it is a very sort of yellowy green colour that might not be to everybody's taste, and there is quite a distinct mould effect. And it's something that's quite different for me because I tend to stick with creams, beiges and greys. So this is pushing me out of my comfort zone a little bit, but with it being quite muted, I think I will get lots of wear out of it. So I'm already sort of planning how this is going to fit into my wardrobe, and I'm quite excited to have this finished. I also wanted to mention on this that I've been really pleasantly surprised by how little yarn this has used. So I only had 4 balls of this, and this is the 4th ball, and I have maybe just under half a ball left to use up of this. So I may even finish the sleeve out of that half a ball, or you know, probably just have to break into this. But that means this whole garment has been knitted in under 4 balls of yarn, which is just crazy to me, or under 4 balls of mohair. I haven't kept tabs on how much of the DK weight I've used, but in terms of the mohair consumption, I'm really pleasantly surprised by how little yarn this has used. Maybe it's because it's knit at a larger gauge on a larger needle, that could be why. But yes, I just thought that was worth pointing out if you are interested in this pattern. And I am knitting the first size in this one. So it recommends 4 balls of mohair for that one. So my next work in progress is an accessory. This doesn't look like much at the moment, but this is the beginnings of a beanie. And this is from the Winter Essentials set by Suzanne Mueller. So in the pattern, you get the instructions for the beanie hat, a neck, so it's sort of a cowl neck, or I believe some people sometimes call it a dicky, so it just sort of sits around the neck, and you have the 2 pieces of fabric that come down, so you could wear it underneath a coat. And then you get the instructions to knit mittens, so you can either knit full mittens or fingerless mittens. And they are all knit in 2x2 rib, like so. So this is of course the beginning of the beanie. You are knitting to a certain length, and then you will knit the decreases to form the top, and then you fold up the bottom to create the rim, like this. So I've got quite a way to go. I think I am maybe just over halfway on the length of this. So quite a way to go on this one. And I'm finding it quite slow going because it's just, at the moment, it's just a mass of 2x2 rib. So I'm not hugely inspired to knit on this, but I do really want the finished object, and I really want the entire set. So this is very much a finished object knit rather than a process knit. So it's hard to find the motivation at the moment, but I think I will get there. So the yarn that I am using is the Filcolana or wetter. And this is actually a sock yarn, but it is the recommended yarn for this pattern. And I'm holding it double, as is recommended in the pattern to achieve gauge. I quite like using a sock yarn for my hats and accessories, because I just feel that that nylon content is going to help it hold up to a lot of wear. And my beanies and mittens do get quite a lot of wear because we spend a lot of time outdoors walking the dog. And it gets very cold in the UK, so I am always wearing my knitted accessories to try and keep warm when we are outdoors. This is my first time using this particular yarn and I'm really enjoying it. It's super soft. It doesn't have that shiny look to it that some sock yarns can have, which I quite like when it doesn't have the shiny look. And when it knits up, it just looks so crisp. The 2x2 ribbing just looks so neat and crisp, which I enjoy. And I think because I've been working with a lot of mohair, that's why I'm enjoying this so much, because when you're not using a mohair, of course, you get a much crisper stitch definition. So I think that's why I'm particularly enjoying how this looks. So this is knit on 3mm needles, and of course you're holding 2 strands of fingering weight yarn, so you're getting around a DK weight gauge. So it's quite a dense fabric, so hopefully it's going to be nice and warm. But with it being on those smaller needles, it is quite slow going. So this has been on the needles since just before the new year. So not a huge amount of progress has been made, but I am quietly chugging away on this, and I'm really hoping to get the full set finished at some point. Perhaps not this winter at the rate I'm going, but certainly by next winter I want to have the hat, the neck and the mittens, so I've got a nice matching set. So this was actually a Christmas acquisition. This was a Christmas gift from my sister, and I have enough of this yarn to knit the entire set. It was something that I had asked for specifically, and I am really pushing myself out of my comfort zone with this colour. I don't know if I mentioned the shade actually. It is the shade 140, and it's this really deep burgundy red. I don't own anything in this colour. It's not a colour that I would really gravitate towards. However, all of my outerwear is in greys and creamy colours. I also have a navy coat that I wear for dog walking, so all very neutral colours. So I'm hoping that this will be a nice pop of colour against my very neutral wardrobe. So pushing myself out of my comfort zone, but I'm really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying how it looks so far. So hopefully I'll get lots of wear out of this set when it is finally finished. My final work in progress is a pair of socks. I have finished the first sock, which hasn't been blocked yet, so it's looking a little funny. And I have made a very small start on the second sock. So I've knit the cuff and maybe 4 rows of the leg. So I do need to pick this one back up. This was my Christmas Eve cast on, and it is a DK weight sock, and I have just self-drafted this. So I cast on, I believe 48 stitches, but I'll pop it on the screen if that's not correct. I've just knit 2x2 rib and then moved into a 3x1 broken rib pattern. I've then knit a slipped stitch heel flap and gusset with a standard heel turn, and I have knit a wedged toe as well. So there's the first sock, and I just need to get cracked on with the second sock. So I made a lot of progress on this on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day and Boxing Day, and then got completely distracted by other things such as my test knit and all of my Christmassy yarns. So I ended up casting this on out of my Christmas acquisitions, and this sort of fell to the wayside. So I would like to get these finished because I need more DK weight socks in my life, because it has been very cold here over the past few weeks, so I could really do with more really warm socks to wear when I'm working from home, because my feet get very cold. So I am trying out a new yarn for this project, and it is the Drops Fiesta sock yarn. This is a relatively new yarn that Drops have released, and it is a DK weight sock yarn. So it's 75% wool and 25% polyamide, which is a standard composition for a sock yarn. So this is the colour that I'm using for the main body of the sock. So this is the colour 22, and it's a sort of a variegated, I think it's trying to imitate a hand-dyed yarn. It's that sort of speckled, variegated, and this is how it knits up. So it gives a similar effect, but I don't think you can ever really emulate a hand-dyed yarn through a commercially dyed yarn. But it's very pretty, and it's obviously a very affordable option. And this is what I'm using for the cuffs and the toe. I've lost the ball band for this one, so I'll have to figure out the shade and pop it on the screen, but it's just sort of a browny beige colour. So I'm using that for the cuffs and the toes. So not too exciting or interesting, but hopefully I'll get those finished soon, because I think I'll get a lot of wear out of them. Okay, we are now moving into the acquisitions section of the video. I do have quite a lot of acquisitions to go through, so I'll try to run through them quite quickly. I will preface this with I wouldn't usually acquire this much yarn in a month. However, it has been Christmas, and I was really lucky to be gifted some yarn over Christmas. And there was also a sale on a particular yarn brand which I had took advantage of just before Christmas as well. So there's a fair amount, but I wouldn't usually have this much that I have acquired in a single month. And I certainly won't be buying any more yarn for a while. So first up, I was gifted a sweater quantity by my mum of the Frittest garn. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but this is a yarn by Sandnes garn. It is an Aran weight yarn, and you get 70 meters per 50 grams. And this is in the shade Beige Melange. I'm sure that is the name of it, and it is the number 3021. So it's a really lovely light beige colour, very much in my comfort range of colours. And it's sort of quite loosely plied. There's only 2 plies that are plied together quite loosely, and it's quite rustic, which I do enjoy a good rustic yarn. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to knit with this one. I've had a quick look at patterns on Ravelry, but there's nothing that really fits in with the idea that I'm envisioning for this. So I may have a go at self-drafting something, potentially. I've never really self-drafted anything other than basic socks, and I've self-drafted a basic raglan before. So the thing that I'm envisioning with this is perhaps more of a dropped shoulder. So we shall see. Next up, also from my mum, I have a sweaters quantity of gynt. Another yarn by Sandnes garn. This is quite a famous yarn. It is a DK weight and you do get 91 meters per 50 grams. So it's more of a heavier DK weight, and I think some people would even classify this as a worsted weight. I've used this yarn once before and I really enjoyed it. It's quite a rustic Norwegian wool. So if you are sensitive to wool, this is perhaps not for you. But as I said previously, I really enjoy a rustic yarn, particularly in the winter months, because it keeps you so warm, and I'm lucky that I'm not sensitive to the more scratchy wools. With it being rustic as well, it holds up so well. I knit my storm sweater in gynt. I've wore it to death and it has barely pilled. So I can't recommend this enough really. But again, if you are more sensitive to wool, I don't think it would be for you. So this is in the shade, the number is 1035. I can't remember the name of the shade off the top of my head, but it is sort of a grey base and it has these tweedy flecks running through it. So I did knit up, oh here it is, I did knit up a little swatch of this because I already know what I want to knit with it. I want to knit the Amy sweater by Petite Knit. She knits her sample in gynt. And I really want that style of sweater. It's something that I don't have in my wardrobe, so I'm really looking forward to knitting this. I've knit up a swatch because I am planning on getting this on the needles next, once either the test knit or the cardigan is finished. So this is what it looks like, and you can see those specks running through. I don't know if that's showing it particularly well, but the tweed specks are sort of a burgundy colour, a similar colour, a little bit darker to this actually, and then a mustard yellow, and there's even some chocolatey brown specks in there as well. So I think that's going to be really pretty, and again, it's a nice way for me to get some colour into my wardrobe, but sticking with that grey base that I feel comfortable with, and then just those slight drops of colour with the tweedy specks. So the other yarn that I was gifted was, of course, the Arwetta, which I've already spoken about. That was gifted to me by my sister. I was also gifted a beautiful set of double pointed needles. These are from Luca, which is a brand that I really love. So all of my interchangeable needles are by this brand. They just seem to work for me, so I stick with them. And this is what it looks like inside. So I really like using double pointed needles when you get to the very end of a cuff, when you're perhaps knitting the ribbing and the short needles are too long to stretch around the circumference, so that I don't have to use magic loop. I prefer to use double pointed needles. So I went for the wooden set because I find that I get a neater result in ribbing with wooden needles, but I prefer to knit with metal needles. So all of my interchangeable needles are the copper metal needles by Luca, and I knit the vast majority of my projects on them. So all the body and sleeve knitting would be done on them because that's just my preference, but I can use these for the sleeve cuffs in particular. And if I am knitting baby knits for gift knits on those very small circumferences is when I would use these. So these range from 2mm to 3.75mm, which will cover the vast majority of the ribbings on the projects that I knit. So this was very kindly gifted to me by my partner's parents. So I'd popped this on my Christmas list to him, and he had sneakily let them know that this was what I was wanting. So I was really, really surprised and pleased to receive this from them, and it will certainly get lots and lots of use. Now, all through December, Knitting for Olive were doing various offers every Sunday. And on one particular Sunday, they had 15% off all of their yarns. And I just couldn't resist it. So I took the opportunity to do an order from them and stock myself up. So I had ordered the fennel seed mohair that I've spoken about previously for the cardigan project. I also ordered 5 balls of the mohair in the oatmeal colour. So this is very much, again, in my comfort colour palette. I don't have plans for this. I plan to just have this sitting in my stash, and then the next time I have a project where I need to hold mohair with it, I have this ready. So no specific plans for that one, but I think it will just be nice to have in stash for when the time comes. I then was also thinking about summer projects, and I wanted to get 2 summer camisole quantities. So I purchased 3 balls of each of these colours, which should be enough for me to get a camisole in each colour. So this is the colour Soft Blue in the Knitting for Olive Merino. So this is their standard fingering weight merino, and it feels really lovely and soft, and this is going to be my first time actually using this merino from Knitting for Olive, so I'm quite looking forward to giving this a go in the summer. So this is in the colour Soft Blue. I don't know if I said that before, but it's a very, very muted blue, which almost looks grey. You only really get that blue hue in the right light, which I just think is really pretty, and it will fit really well into my summer wardrobe. And then I got 3 balls of this one as well. This is the colour Morning Haze, and this is a very lightly marled grey colour. You may even describe that as a greige, like a beigey grey. Very much in my wheelhouse again. Very much a comfort colour for me, so not pushing the boat out with either of those. So quite a lot of acquisitions. I have a lot of yarn in stash now, probably enough that I wouldn't have to buy any more yarn at all this year. I'm not going to hold myself to that, but I am certainly going to try and cut down on how much yarn I purchase this year, because yeah, I just have so much and I'm actually running out of places to store it. And I work a full-time job, so I only have so much time to knit. So I'll be hard pushed to get all of that yarn out of my stash this year. So I'll definitely be carrying some of my stash through to 2026. So that is everything from me this month. I will be back again in a month's time to do another roundup. Hopefully I will have finished both of those garments then, and I can show them off, and I will have some new exciting projects on the needles for us to talk about. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I really enjoy chatting with you all in the comments. So please do leave me a comment and I will get back to you. And that's been one of my favourite things about this YouTube journey so far, is chatting to all of you. So thank you for watching. Goodbye.